Thank you, Chair. Right, with respect to the annual report, it was Richard Bonham, the Head of Audit Partnership at CMAP, who was overseeing the audit plan for 24-25. So the actual annual report is Richard's report. It's the Head of Audit Partnerships report for that particular period. Going forward for 25-26, it'll be my annual report this time next year, and I'll obviously provide in that. But what I'll do is today I'll present the report which is in front of you today as Richard's. The report provides the overall internal audit opinion for the year as required by the public sector internal audit standards. The purpose for providing the annual audit opinion is to provide independent objective assessment of the authority's risk management controls, governance arrangements. It looks at the scrutiny and review by the committee and the basis for the internal control environment and how it's basically managed by the management and how it's overseen by the audit committee. The opinion is based on the outcome of internal audit work which we've undertaken, which presently has been consultancy work, because as Richard alluded to earlier, the organisation in its infancy, and it didn't seem fair to jump in there and start doing critical audits and making recommendations from the outset. It made more sense to work alongside, do consultancy work, give advice, and make suggestions for obviously improvements at that stage. Any follow-up work which has been undertaken, of which I don't think in 24-25 we actually did any follow-up work, but we've got a couple of audits in the plan this year which pick up on things we looked at in the previous year, so that's in the pipeline. Any other work from any other assurance providers that we're privy to, and obviously engagement with senior management, external audit, the risk management process. I think the important thing to say is we were engaged in October of last year, 2024. We actually only started formally delivering in November that year. So our opinion here is based on about five months of work and 5 months of auditing. The opinions that can be given: substantial assurance, reasonable assurance, limited or no assurance. I don't think I'm giving anything away when I say we're going for reasonable assurance. We're happy with what we've seen in place with respect to the controls, the governance framework, the risk management, and we can see that while a lot of systems are in their infancy, they are going in the right direction and they are having the due diligence and care placed in the development of them. With respect to the opinion, he's notified that he's happy with the level of coverage which we've actually undertaken, and with the insight that he's gained from his meetings with Richard and his predecessor, the previous interim section 73 officer. Assurances have also been taken from third parties, which I think I'd already mentioned a few moments ago. I think the important thing to identify here, to draw to the committee's attention, is CMAP's independence. We need to ensure that when providing an opinion on the control environment, we're completely impartial to the organisation and to the controls and systems in place. CMAP is a separate entity to EMCCA, so we are a partnership organisation which deliver the service. So we've got no direct management, no direct line responsibilities to management within the organisation. So we've not got that conflict of interest or anybody sort of pulling strings, so to speak. So we've got that complete independence. Next part is just to identify our credentials, essentially. This year we've complied with the public sector standard, internal audit standards, which are the PISAs. We do annual quality assurance and improvement review of how we are working and how we're operating as an organisation. The present QAIP, which is the Quality Assurance Plan, is in the appendix at the end of this particular report. And I think the remainder of the report just gives a summary of the previous work which we've undertaken during 24-25, which has already been reported to this committee previously. So I'm not going to go into that in any detail, other than to say overall we've reached the adequate assurance rating, reasonable assurance rating. Reasonable, yeah.
Thank you, Martin. Obviously, it's not a full year, probably not even half a year. So can you just confirm that your scope wasn't restricted at all?
The scope was not restricted at all, no.
If you confirm that. Members, any questions? Councillor Steve?
I'm obviously going on what I know about how our council operates, but when there are specific recommendations made, there's always there's the response of the manager is given to that, and also there's a date set for the action to take place. Are we going? And we certainly see all those 4 reports where there are some concerns about the level of assurance. So is that the sort of approach we're going to be taking here?
Martin, you want to come in?
I can answer that one.
With management response as well.
Yes, that says that absolutely the approach that we're going to take here. At the moment, it's literally just been consultancy pieces, and the first piece of work, which is actually a standard audit with recommendations, has actually just been completed. It's a risk management audit, and I believe the auditor is feeding back to Richard this afternoon on the outcome of that. So that should hopefully be reported at the next committee, at which point, yes, there'll be recommendations, there'll be follow up, and that will be in the progress report, which will follow this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, only just to build on that, to say that absolutely we have a partnership with CMAP, and we will work collaboratively both to develop the audit plan and indeed make sure that we take those management actions that are identified, findings that are identified, and take them extremely seriously and make sure that they're implemented, including a management response, including a timetable. It is a function of the nature of the organisation as it is now, but clearly as we mature, then that approach will get much more embedded. And I'd also add that I will also be using and placing reliance on our internal audit to look into matters that may be of concern to myself from time to time again. So again, it will be very much a collaborative partnership approach, but respecting, of course, the independence of CMAP and our obligation as management to respond to those findings in a timely manner.
Also, as we go through the year, there will be a recommendation tracker. So as the audit committee, we have assurance that the recommendations are being implemented on a timely basis. Councillor,
page 129, you've got a little table, and it gives you a summary of audit work undertaken. And the bottom one is program project management, which is something that's cropped up today as not a concern, but something we'd like to highlight. I just noticed it's nothing at this stage, as of April 30th, had been allocated on project and program and project management. I'm just wondering, have we allocated any work?
That's been brought forward to the 25-26 audit plan, because at the time when we were looking to start it, it wasn't sufficiently mature in order for us to actually get in there.
Yeah, I understand that.
So yes, it will be undertaken.
So,
so,
right,
yes.
so it won't be 0% at the end of.
Oh no,
it'll be,
no, it'll be complete.
It'll
Yes.
be 99.9.
Well, hopefully, yes.
Okay, good, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Page 131, the Adult Skills Fund. There's obviously a transition going on here. I assume that the next report will give us some sense of the transition in terms of risk here. It says here that the funding will not be delegated until August, so hopefully we'll get an update on how well that has gone.
Yes, there will be. There's actually a further adult skills audit in the 25-26 audit plan, so that will be undertaken in the year. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, was that page 131?
131, the Adult Skills Fund.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Edwards.
Sure, you'll know from my time on audit committee in EMCCA council that I always used to say accounts payable without really knowing what it was. But that sense of there was always something to find. Get a sense that this organisation is slightly different in the number of kind of transactions it has compared to what a city council would be doing. So in your understanding of the nature of the difference of the transactions you do compared to most authorities, what would be the equivalent of accounts payable in terms of one that's a high volume and needs the checking more than you might imagine?
I don't know if Martin want to come in, but I'll certainly come in terms of my, I mean, first of all, I think, well, let me start and then maybe hand over to Martin in terms of my reflection. I mean, yes, we are a different beast in that sense. We won't have ever the level of transactions that a large local authority would have and what you might be used to in terms of, I don't know, care packages and so on and so forth, where there's a fair degree of churn of volume transactions. There will be a degree of those, but I would anticipate a smaller number of larger value transactions through our books, both on the revenue side, and we've referenced the Adult Skills Fund. I mean, those are big allocations to providers, so they need to be, audited in a slightly different way than you might in a churn of transactions. And similarly in the capital, where our capital spend is largely distributive at the moment, but as it moves to us being responsible for direct delivery and commissioning of those services, again, that will have an implication in terms of the types of audit that we will commission. It's also worth adding, as a slight complication to this, is that we don't, like a city council, don't directly manage our what we call transactional finance. So our finance system is currently sat on Derbyshire County Council SAP system, and they undertake our accounts receivable, accounts payable, what we call transactional finance, on our behalf. However, we do have a plan to move to an independent finance system, so those things will come into our control in the fullness of time. Martin, is there anything
well, two things I can pick up there. One of them with respect to the systems which are still out at the constituent authorities. Richard has done a degree of verification and checking with particular various audit departments and management for those organisations. Further to that, with respect to the transactions which are taking place sort of during 25-26, there's not specific AP auditing because it wouldn't make sense, because obviously, like Richard's just said, but we've got a local enterprise partnership, integration of the D2N into that, bus station, transport initiatives, the Adult Skills Fund. All of those will be obviously doing a review of how that's being managed and how the money is being allocated and how payments are being made from that. So there will be an objective within the audit and a number of controls looking at that side of it, even though it's not a specific audit in its own right. So it will be picked up. It'll just be picked up as part and parcel of the individual elements, as opposed to looking at the transaction payments in their own right.
Yeah, and it's just to say again, which we kind of muttered earlier on, once we're getting into dealing with people who provide training in adult skills, just that has a red flag for us, full stop. There's, whoa, watch out there. I mean, I know it's not the same thing, but I think the tertiary college in Nottingham has collapsed in the last fortnight.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah, and
10 years too late.
10 years too late. But the gist of that is, we have a sense that that's a sector in which perhaps is not as reliable as you imagine it might or should be. As long as you've got a sense that we want you to be, aware, checking, thinking of new ways to check. I think that would be just the thing we say, and nothing more really, because I haven't got any evidence, just a sense of unease.
Thank you. And also, internal audit will be relying on Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire County Council's internal auditors for the systems that the platforms they supply as well.
Yeah, obviously only the ones where until they become part of EMCCA. Yes.
Beth, were you going to? Did you want to come in? No. Councillor Staton.
Looking at page, one of the issues identified by the internal audit was continuity or incident response plans, which I don't know, would that include, for example, attacks on the IT system and how they would be dealt with? I'm just wondering what the plans are to tackle that, because obviously it's potentially catastrophic or certain and urgent.
Yeah, no, and it's a good point, because we are progressively taking responsibility for our own IT systems. They are largely, as has been previously noted, with previous authorities, with the constituent authorities, and of course they have well developed business continuity plans, which to a degree we are piggybacking on. But obviously, as we take more and more things into EMCCA, we will have to develop those plans ourselves. The other thing around business continuity, of course, is that local authorities are clearly running large operational services across place, across adult social care, children's. So business continuity is more critical in that environment than in our current world. That said, when we become the Transport Authority, that is a game changer in terms of business continuity. And that means that over the next months, as we plan to bring those services into EMCCA, we will have to plan accordingly around business continuity. But it is, I can assure you, it all in hand and ready.
Thank you, everyone. So we are asked to note the contents of this report.
Yeah.
The next item is item 11, the audit progress report. Martin, do you want
What
to take it?
page, please?
What
And
page?
that is on page 134.
Mhm.
If you scroll straight to page 136, that's where I'll be starting. This is the report that's our standard audit progress report, which you'll see quite a lot going forward in future committees and future years. The audit dashboard, which is on page 136, does have additional dashboards. There's 3 additional dashboards, which we normally represent there with respect to recommendations, looking at recommendations which are currently open, movement in recommendations, i.e. ones which have been made compared to ones which have been closed, and recommendations months overdue to show how far past expected implementation dates recommendations have been made, have passed, if they haven't been implemented at that stage. At the moment, as I alluded to earlier, we've got our first actual audit with recommendations just concluding presently. Once that one's been issued, there will be additional dashboards on this front page to actually show you how recommendations are progressing, how movement is taking place and so forth. And there'll also be a separate recommendation tracking section at the end of this report. Once recommendations start to grow, to obviously filter back to this committee to give oversight of everything. Now there's just 2 dashboards. There's the plan progress, which identifies where we are at 25-26 audit plan. So you can see that we've got 10% complete, which if you look at the next page, that can be all the jobs which are reporting to you at this committee. And then the rest of the jobs are up and running. There's 62% not yet allocated. That's because they're not yet due. They're due for allocation later on in the plan year. We do try and spread them over the full 4 quarters. The next one is the jobs completed in period. This is where we give you the control assurance ratings for each one of the audits. The 2 audits which we're reporting today are both consultancy pieces of work, which is why we haven't put a control assurance rating against those. We don't make formal recommendations and we don't make formal assurance, give formal assurance ratings on them, with them being consultancy pieces. It's for the authority to take action accordingly. That said, normally when we've done a consultancy piece, 12-18 months down the line, we'll follow it up with an audit to actually ensure that what we expect to see in place and where controls we would have perceived should have been improved have been implemented accordingly. The following page 137 in your papers, that gives a breakdown of where we are with the present audits. So you've got the brought forward audits at the bottom from the previous year's plan, which one of the councillors was looking at earlier with respect to the programme project management one. And then obviously all the new audits which were agreed for the 25-26 plan going forward, of which we've made a start to a couple of them. There's a 3rd one due to commence shortly, but it was post putting the report together for this committee. It is worthy to note that there has been an additional audit assignment requested to look at the validity of evidence submitted by one of the training providers for skills boot camps, which I think ties in with what the 2 gentlemen to the right had mentioned earlier. So that's an additional audit which we've undertaken, which we will be feeding back to the authority. It's still ongoing presently, but a summary of that will come to this committee in due course once that work has concluded. It just remains that there's the 2 audits that we've completed there. There's the governance consultancy and the procurement consultancy. Over the next few pages, we've identified what we've identified against our scope and objectives as the potential risks and what mitigating actions we're looking to actually put in place. Where we've been quite happy with the particular objective heading, I've just identified it in there just to let you know that we haven't raised any issues with it. So obviously there's no mitigation actions for potential new controls identified, but that should give you an idea for both the procurement and the governance audits. And I think that is that one. I have made note actually on page 141 of your papers. There will be a further section to the tail end of this report which covers recommendation tracking and then highlights particular recommendations should they have passed their original action date, or in due course any low risk recommendations where they get 12 months past their action date. We don't bring all low risk recommendations. We concentrate on moderate, significant, mainly for the committee's attention.
Martin? Members, any comments?
Just going to mention that in a relatively short space of time, we seem to have a very professional, robust internal audit system, and I think that's comforting, given the amount of money that's going to be handled here.
Okay, Councillor Kent?
I was just going to say, having sat on some committees where outcomes are measured in a variety of colours that are not red, amber, green, it was good to see red, amber, green.
We don't want to see too much red, please.
Thank you. Any other observations, questions? Okay, thank you, Martin. We'll ask to note this report. Moving on to item 12, which is on page 142, and that's the new global internal audit standards. And I'll let Martin take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. This is basically the standards which we follow. The way in which CMAP's constituted, we deliver audit services for a number of local authorities, and we've got a separate operational group and an operational board which basically manages our effectiveness and how we operate and our performance and so forth. But I just wanted to bring to this committee's attention that there are new standards actually coming in place for 25 onwards with respect to internal audit, and we will obviously keep this committee informed of where that of how we're progressing against those and how we're delivering against those. What I will say is usually the chair of the particular authorities that we deliver the audits for, the chair of the audit committee and either the section 151 monitoring officer or section 73 officer in this case will sit on the ops group and ops board. I'm presuming that'll be Shale in this instance and Richard, so they will have an oversight of that and they'll be able to obviously feed back to the committee should they have any issues or concerns. With respect to the standards though, taking this report in front of you now, I'm literally just bringing this just to make you aware of what's happening and so forth. Previously, internal audit have been required to follow the PSAs, which is the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards. That was identified by the relevant internal audit standard setters, which are known as the RESAs. There are quite a lot of acronyms here, so they're all explained within the papers, should you want to reference those. From this year onwards, January 24, there's a new global internal audit standards which have been approved and come into effect. That's the Institute of Internal Auditors global standards. Now they are a global standard for managing and delivering audits, internal audits across the whole world, public sector, private sector, everything. The reason I wanted to put this paper together, there's two elements to it. Obviously, with them being world standard, there's an application note which has been put together by CIPFA, which is the first one of the appendix which is attached to this, which identifies the differences of how internal audit operates within the UK public sector, and it gives a few exemptions to operating to the global standards, and it also adds some additional controls and some additional functions in there which we have to do within the UK public sector, which aren't in the worldwide standards. Moving forward, I don't know which page it is, in your page 146, it gives a summary of the new internal audit standards and the 5 domains which are laid out there. The third domain is governing internal audit function. And I'm just thinking, yeah, you've got that one. Now there is an additional page of information on that one, which was actually in the report which I forwarded through to EMCCA. EMCCA took the report and they put it in their standard format, in their standard papers, for obviously sending through to the committee. So I don't think you've actually got this page, so I'll provide a verbal update on it, and it would probably make sense if we sent the report out afterwards. So obviously the committee can actually see it. It's page 6 of 7 in the paper that you received in due course. What this basically identifies is domain 3 is looking at how the internal audit function is authorised by the board, where it's positioned within the individual organisation, and how the board oversee the internal audit function and review it within the authority, so to speak. Now, due to that not being something which is under our control, because that's under the control of each individual partner authorities or constituent authorities for which we provide the services for, Chartered Institute of Public Finance Accountancy have developed a separate code of practice, which is the second appendix, which is attached to this one within your report. And that is for the local authority, or the authority in this stage, to actually identify how they manage it, how they put the governance structure in place, and how audit fits into the organisation and is overseen. So I was literally just wanting to bring this to this committee's attention, just so you're fully aware of A, the standards which we follow, being the global standards, B, the fact that there's a separate application note which governs how we operate, which ties in with the local authority standard. And then there's a separate document, which is the code of practice, which is how the organisation then manages and fits in and provides scrutiny of internal audit.
Thank you, Martin. Any questions, comments?
Silence.
Days.
Councillor Edwards.
It's when you come to something like this, and it says the global.
Yes.
I mean, wow. And we're a part of the world here. It's just like, you know. So how relevant is global in this context? But I mean, really what I'm trying to say is this. Have you got a sense of how audit is different in organisations like this? And have you been talking to sister organisations across the country about how they're doing things, so that you pick up on their knowledge rather than have to try and work it all out yourself?
Yes and yes. First of all, with respect to the global standards, there is a global standard in place which pretty much governs the way which internal audit operates and functions throughout. As I've said, where there are differences for the local authority and public sector, they're identified within the application note. And second to that, yes, when we have actually done the majority of the consultancy pieces of work at the start of the 24-25 plan, at the start of our journey, if you like, with EMCCA, yes, we went to a number of other organisations of a similar ilk and basically said, what have you got in place? How have you managed this? What risks have you faced? What issues have you had? And then we've assessed that against how EMCCA are performing, what EMCCA are doing, and obviously made suggestions accordingly and assessed them against that as a benchmark. Yes.
Yeah, my question also related to this triangulation of the international, global, national, and then local. In terms of where you're drawing your terms of reference, I suppose I'll have to sit down and try and actually distill that. But yeah, fascinating.
Just a bit of background. In terms of the way the global standards arrive, partly because a lot of the multinationals are based around the world.
Yes.
And investors and the market have to have assurance that that the internal audit, which is very often outsourced to the sort of the firms. So there is an sort of equal standard so that people can rely on what is being produced and, you know, the processes and protocols.
Does ethics come into this, by the way?
Yes, ethics is a big,
Because we haven't
it's domain one, I think ethics is.
Yeah, we haven't said much about ethics.
Oh, domain
in our
2.
Conversation. Well, we should take it for granted that we're all, sorry, Chair, but we're all informed by the same ethical values. Don't assume that. So I'm just wondering how do we navigate sort of different ethical standards within this process that is international, global, national, and local?
The UK, especially for local government, you have the SIPFA, which produces an application note for local government, which is what, because again, how our local government works is different to local governments around the world.
Yes.
And SIPFA sort of then brings it local. So it's actually an operational standard. But I'll let Martin, who's probably the expert on this.
Sorry, clear what I'm trying to do.
Just reframe the question, please.
Yeah, I think it's for me understanding in terms of the sort of measures and template that you're using in this. You're saying that it is informed by standards that are set globally or internationally, but also standards that are national, standards that may be local. If I totally misunderstand what you're trying to convey.
I think with respect to the standards which are here, it's a set standard for how the internal audit function operates,
Right.
and the ethical and professional standards that internal audit as a profession and the internal auditors need to abide by with respect to that.
Yeah.
In respect to the individual audit engagement which we undertake, which we do into ethical standards and professionalism and so forth, that is a different thing because we follow a separate process and a separate framework and a separate audit programme for doing that to this. But they are very clearly quite aligned because obviously it's still professional standards, it's still ethics and so forth. So yes.
Thank you. Any further questions for Martin? Thank you. So we then move on to item 13, which is our work programme.
Yeah, well, so I mean, in many ways, this work programme needs to be dictated by yourselves. We'll make some clear suggestions, and there will be certain things that we need to bring to you at certain points in the year. Draft accounts being a case in point today, updates to the Treasury management strategy and performance thereof. So, what this work programme is, as it's set out in the paper, is a kind of first stab on the kind of things that we would want to do and you would expect to come to this committee. But I think we've already taken some actions today, which will then enrich this work programme. You know, we wanted to have that discussion, for example, on whether you wanted us to develop some training for audit committee members. We've taken that positively, and we'll build that into the programme. In terms of what to expect at the next meeting, the 19th, so for completeness, we will be looking to bring those accounts related to the short part of 23-24 that EMCCA was in existence formally to yourselves. They're likely to be published ahead of the meeting at the on the website, but we will bring that as for completeness. You've also asked for a risk management update, as discussed earlier in the meeting. And of course, that will again be coming in September. And there will also be on the governance side our complaints and code of conduct. That will be an ethics point that will be coming to the committee as well in September. Flowing forward to November. There will be, as I indicated earlier, the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. So that will look at our Treasury Management performance during the first half of the year. And I've built in provision for an external audit update. If I agree with the external auditors that could come to September, we may decide to bring that a little bit early to you. And then, of course, a continued update from Martin on the internal audit programme of work. So very much a draft programme of work, but hopefully gives you enough of a flavour of what to expect in the next meetings.
Thank you.
I don't know whether I'm looking in the wrong place. My appendix B appears to be blank. Have you got something on there?
Not the same as you.
Yes. I think it's not in appendix. I've got the forward plan.
And this B is page 177 and it's blank.
So we got the appendix A is work programme. Page 74.
It's the key one, isn't it?
There's no appendix A, is there?
I think, yeah, so on the PDF version, I can see the appendix A is
Terms of reference.
Terms of
yes. And appendix B is the draft work programme, which on the PDF version is correct. Absolutely correct. I mean, just to repeat, on the web version, there is an appendix A, which talks about the forward work programme. I mean, just to summarize what Richard has said, is essentially we're going to get the reports for the draft accounts at the September meeting, risk management reports, and the governance items and complaints and code of conduct. And there'll be internal audit items which have not been populated yet onto that. And then in November, we've got the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report, external audit item from Mazars, and again, probably an upgrade on the internal audit. So apologies that on the PDF version, we haven't got that.
We will, of course, read the assurance framework and the delivery monitor that you as well, that we weaved into the work programme as well.
Councillor Chapman.
Will we get something on programming and project management? It's down, you haven't made a start yet, but when were you envisaging?
Is that something Martin bring? Yeah,
Great.
Martin
Question for
can comment
myself.
on that one.
We'll have to agree when we're due to commence that audit, and we'll commence it. It's unlikely to be the November committee, which is the next one, which we're scheduled to give a progress update. I think it'll be ongoing and underway at that point. But it's likely to be the committee after that we should probably hopefully have a report out.
So we should get something within the nearish future.
Oh yeah, within yes.
Drift into next.
It's not, no,
next
correct. It's going to be
financial
covered within the 25-26 year. It's difficult to give you
Yeah,
a deadline
I
for when it
fully
will be at the
understand.
moment.
As long as
Till
it's
I've commenced,
on
yes,
the radar.
yes,
For me,
no.
that's one of the most important.
Yeah, we certainly won't want it to slip out to 25-26.
No, you wouldn't.
Thank you, everyone. So that was the last item. Beth, I know you've been patiently waiting. Have you from Mazars? Is there anything that Mazars you wanted to raise more?
Really, I think Richard summarised kind of where we're at quite well. But I guess just an update from our side that we have made a start on the audit. So that's on the 24-25 accounts, because as Richard explained, 23-24 are not quite ready just yet. So we're in the early stages at the moment. So we'll probably bring more of an update next time, but we're working well with the finance team just to kind of get our heads around. Obviously, it's brand new organisation, brand new accounts. So next time we probably will bring our audit strategy memorandum, which will set out our audit approach and our plan and what we're focusing on. We've not been able to do that until draft accounts, just because we weren't sure yet what was in there. But you can expect to see that next time.
Thank you. So that's the end of the meeting. Thank you, everyone, on coming to Rushcliffe on this warm Friday in the middle of summer. Enjoy the rest of the summer and see you all in September.
Very much.
Thank you.
Everything you expected.
Painless.
How was
Painless when you got
Oh, best. Before you written.